I am going to continue by focusing a bit more on the Regional Committee for Central and Eastern Europe. Now, all of these regional committees are different in the way that they try to achieve their mission. But one thing is the same for all of these regional committees. And I have to try to go back to correct slide. Yeah, there we go. So what is similar with all of the regional committees is the way they are composed in their composition of members. So we have a contact person from the international office, which is Thomas Daniels, for this regional committee. We have then academic staff members from the three groups that we have in this university: humanities, science, engineering and technology, and biomedical sciences. And then representatives from the central offices, so not just the international office, but also people from marketing, for instance, but also from the research council, from the research office. And we have one regional expert, which is a staff member of KU Leuven with a particular background and expertise in this region. So in this committee, we started by asking ourselves, what do we mean by Central and Eastern Europe? Because there are, of course, some assets that we need to take into account. There is, first of all, the geographical proximity of this region. There is the evidence of quality of the universities in this region in terms of education, in terms of research. And there is, at least for part of these countries in this region, the possibility to use funds, collaboration funds from the European Union, European Commission, to support and to foster collaboration. So we decided to, in a first instance, focus on those countries from Central and Eastern Europe that are within the European Union, and that we would stimulate the development of research, collaboration, exchange of students and staff with universities, research institutes in these countries. So that explains also the focus of this first event that this regional committee has organized. So we wanted to focus on cooperation, research cooperation, mainly between the KU Leuven and partners in Central and Eastern Europe, with the case study Poland. The focus on Poland can be explained. Yep, something going on with the slides beyond my control. I'm going back to the program. There it is. So that's why we wanted to focus on Poland. It is a country where we have a lot of collaboration already. There is also the fact that KU Leuven and Jagiellonian University are both members in the UNA Europa European University Initiative. So there are a number of reasons why we would, in this first event, focus on collaboration with Poland, but as a case study and being representative for possibilities that we have undoubtedly to collaborate also with the other countries in Central and Eastern Europe. And that is definitely also the roadmap we want to develop further. So we start now with exploring and presenting possibilities with Poland and other countries in Central and Eastern Europe, members of the European Union. But definitely in a later phase, we will expand the scope to the other member countries of this Central and Eastern Europe region. So the program that we have designed for that focuses in the first part on internal funds in KU Leuven and then on national or regional funds, both KU Leuven and Poland. And after the break, we'll focus on a bit more wider scope and go to European funding opportunities. And we will conclude with some contributions by the vice rectors for research of both KU Leuven and Jagiellonian University, and by a statement by the general representative of Flanders to Poland and the Baltic states. Just a few practicalities before I pass the floor for the first part. So some practicalities. Please put your microphone on mute, turn your camera off for technical reasons. If you are presenting, you can take control. It will also mean that you're able then to see the notes that you might have. The slide notes will become then visible if you are the presenter, but only take control, please, if you are the presenter. Because of the density of the program, it's not possible to ask questions in an interactive way, but you can ask your questions in the chat. We will keep track of those, and we will post a summary of the questions and provide answers where applicable on the website after this seminar. And then please take note also that the seminar is recorded, which we like to confirm for GDPR reasons. So that's my part of the welcome. We are still quite nicely on time, so I can immediately pass the microphone now to the moderator of the first part, sessions 1 and 2. I will stop presenting. All right. So Professor Stefan Poets will be chairing the first part. If I'm well informed, he is in Poland for the time being. Professor Poets is with the Faculty of Sciences of KU Leuven. He's the head of the Department of Mathematics and in the unit for plasma astrophysics. And he's also a distinguished member of the KU Leuven Regional Committee on Central and Eastern Europe. I will introduce the chairperson of the second part after the break. But now, Stefan, please, can you take over for moderating the first part?
Thank you, Jos. So I should also say that I also linked to the University of Marie Skłodowska-Curie in Lublin, Poland. So we start with session 1, which is on internal funds that are available at KU Leuven for cooperation with Poland. And we will first have a presentation by Ms. Marian Schoenmaekers, who is the head of internal funds, so member of the Research Coordination Office of KU Leuven. And then there will be a case study, ongoing CELSA Network, which will be presented by Professor Joep Konings.
Okay, thank you, Professor Poets. I hope everyone can hear me.
We can.
And I cannot take over control because I do not see the presentation anymore. Can anyone put the presentation in shared modus, please? Am I the only one who does not see the presentation?
We don't see the presentation anymore. Jos, I think you stopped the presentation, but maybe you should. I don't know who's controlling this, but
Helene is controlling the presentation.
Helene, can you share your screen, please?
Yes. 1 second. It should be uploading again at the moment.
So in the meantime, I can start telling you that, so I'm Marian Schoenmaekers, head of the internal funds KU Leuven indeed, and I'm asked to tell you in some brief words something about our CELSA network indeed. Afterwards, some other possibilities for applying for funding within the internal funds KU Leuven. And then I will pass the floor to Professor Joep Konings, who already has a CELSA project running, and I think he will tell us something about that. Thank you for putting the presentation. I will take over control and I hope this will work. Yes. So this is a very strange slide. Do you see the images on the slide, or do you see a blank slide like me?
No, I see slide 16 actually. Now it's 17 and
Oh, it's still coming up.
it's jumping out.
Yeah, there is a delay, I guess, in the appearance of, because I have slide 21.
Yeah, I also start.
It's only title.
Yes, I also see slide 21.
But with images or just titles like
only
me?
title. Only
Only titles.
Okay, I will skip this slide. It was an introductory slide on that we were inspired by a Lehrer paper and so on to enforce our cooperation with some central European universities, and that is how we came up with the idea of the CELSA network. And it is in the meantime a network of 10 universities in 6 countries actually. And from Poland we have Jagiellonian University and University of Warsaw making part of the network since 2 years now. The CELSA agreement was signed in 2016, and the explicit goal was a cooperation in the field of research, education, and contribution to community. And yeah, and there are, we have organized the last years some activities around that in the field of education. We had a PhD academy in 2018, and there are roundtable discussions on all sorts of topics. Contribution to society, we have recently installed the CELSA Society Award, but again, we organize roundtable discussions with the partners, and we organize also a training week in Leuven around track transfer and so on. A very important pillar in the CELSA cooperation is the CELSA Research Fund, where we try, where we want to fund research projects to establish or consolidate cooperation networks with KU Leuven and partners in Central and Eastern Europe. We will launch next month the 3rd call in a cycle of 2 3-year projects of this fund. And KU Leuven yearly spends a budget of 1.5 million to this, and all partner universities, they do add approximately 60,000 euros each per year. Yeah, these are some slides to show you that there are a lot of people who are very interested in this cooperation. Well, in the beginning there was a lot of enthusiasm, but now we are on a steady state of 29 applications per year. And what we see is that in most of the applications there are 2 partner institutions involved, but there are also applications of groups where more partners do work together in a research proposal. These are the budgets, and so you can see there is a lot of budget going around in this CELSA. And all scientific fields are actually represented, or a lot of scientific fields, because one of the aims of the CELSA was also to be comprehensive. We have to be able to divide the funds. We have installed a CELSA evaluation committee in which professors from KU Leuven, but also representatives of each partner university are present, and this committee prepares the evaluation, which then has to be ratified by the CELSA board, and at the moment this board is presided by an Tartu University from Estonia, I'm sorry. So this is what concerns CELSA, and then, but there are some other, we have, of course, we have an internal fund, which is a bit bigger than the CELSA alone. And unfortunately, these internal funds are reserved for KU Leuven researchers only, but there are some possibilities to cooperate within all these types of funding that we have for our professors. And there are also mandate funding schemes in which there might be possibilities for cooperation, or might be possibilities for researchers from Poland to come on a temporary basis to KU Leuven, or for a short period, or a longer one. In all the project proposals that can be submitted at our internal funds, we do allow our professors to add letters of commitment, or to prepare a proposal in which they actually go for a joint doctorate. And these are ways to cooperate with researchers from other countries. We also have a research professorship program, which is called BOFSAP, where researchers can apply for a position at KU Leuven, or short-time postdoctoral mandates. And then, some other possibilities in which the Global PhD Partnerships is a recent, relatively big program where we have partnerships with some universities that we pick out to set up joint doctorates. So there are possibilities, but of course they all depends on initiatives that are taken by researchers or by policymakers to make this happen. I think I'm almost at the last slide. No, and if researchers from your region would be interested in working together, we have some portals or sites where you can find information on the research that is happening at KU Leuven, as there is our research portal where you can look for topics or groups. We have also a page where all our key areas of research are assembled and grouped into 9 key areas. We have a who's who, where you can find all our researchers on the basis of their affiliation or on name. And then as the last, we also have installed since 2 years now, I guess, some KU Leuven institutes, which are interdisciplinary institutes, and where there are a lot of professors working together on some important themes. I think I'm going to leave it to this, and I'm going to leave the floor for Professor Joep Konings, who has got a CELSA project, and I think, Professor Konings, that you can then take over the presentation.
Okay. So I took it over, but then I see a bunch of slides. So let's see where I can find my slides. Okay, let's see. I just pushed the button. No. Do I share my own slides, or is the slides in the slide deck that you guys provided? Okay, yeah, I get it. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I get it. Okay, so first of all, thank you, Marian, for the introduction, and also the colleagues for the introduction of the context of international collaboration. Let me say up front, I'm very grateful to KU Leuven that I had the opportunity to get funding to work with a partner. The case study is not with Poland, so I got funding to collaborate with colleagues from the University of Ljubljana in Slovenia. But of course, similar collaborations could be set up with the 2 partner universities that were mentioned.
in Poland. And so what I will do is I will start by saying a little bit about how the collaboration came about, and I will focus especially on the value added that we realized. And so the topic that we worked on is in economics, and it's really looking at basically how economic shocks affect booms and busts in a small open economy. And so this fitted in a larger research program that I and my team already embarked upon at KU Leuven, and which got funding, but where the funding was mainly going to other topics. So the project we submitted together with the colleagues of Ljubljana University, we could say was actually adding additional research insights applied to a particular case, which was the case of business cycles in Slovenia. So what we did, I'll very briefly say a little bit about the research project. What we really were interested in was to get access to microdata. We call it also sometimes big data. So basically, we refer here to firm level data at a very granular level, where we had information on a lot of income statements, but also in addition, we had information on detailed transaction level data, such as business to business flows. And so one of the interesting parts of this project was that, you know, Belgium is a small open economy, Slovenia is a small open economy, but of course Slovenia went through a transition period in the 1990s, like most Central and East European countries. So this was an interesting comparison that we could start exploiting by looking at how business dynamics evolved in Slovenia versus Belgium. So that was a little bit the idea behind it. An important selling point, I think, that we pushed was the high data quality that we could get access to both in Slovenia and in Belgium, as we covered the full population of firms. And so, as I said before, it was really to understand how economic shocks propagated through the rest of the economy. So that was the content in a nutshell. But I was asked to focus especially on the added value of this collaboration. And of course, the first obvious value added was the fundamental research. The great thing about, I think, the CELSA initiative is that it stimulates collaboration between different universities, but rather than a top-down approach, it's a bottom-up approach. So often, and the Vice Rector of International Relations will confirm this, often the university tries to set up collaborations with other universities, but often it happens as a top-down strategy, and it's then not always obvious to find colleagues who really want to kind of fit into that scheme. The CELSA project is a little bit different. You need to submit a project which is inspired by your research agenda, so it's fundamental research, and then you look for collaboration with a partner institute, and so there's something concrete to work on. And that makes it much more fun and much more interesting, and I think also much more productive. So in our case, we were able to finance a PhD student. She will be defending, in fact, next week, her thesis. So that's already a very interesting concrete outcome. But apart from that, a number of papers have also been written by her and by the colleagues. I think an important value added of this project is that by setting up this collaboration, we immediately got access to confidential Slovenian microdata. So I'm now talking from the perspective of KU Leuven, but also vice versa. The Slovenian colleagues, they also acquired access to confidential microdata from Belgium. So we exchanged data sets, which is a cheap way of going forward, because if you have to, say, buy these data sets, that's usually costing quite a lot of money. And second, especially when you work with confidential data, in our case, it's not so obvious to get access, being a Belgian researcher, to confidential data from Slovenia and vice versa. So by pooling resources, And by collaborating, it was much easier to get access to these confidential data for our research purposes. In addition, it also spilled over to research in the other program, the research programs that we are embarking on in KU Leuven. And so it was to the benefit also to other PhD students. In other words, not only the Slovenian data were used in the context of the CELSA project, but we started also working on other projects using these data sets. Another obvious value added, since there's a lot of emphasis at KU Leuven to also deliver PhD students, the way it works is that we typically have a number of internal members in a PhD committee, but we also require in economics at least 2 external members in a PhD committee. And so by having this collaboration with the Slovenian partner, we immediately actually had the external members of the PhD committee, and by having that collaboration, they were involved from the start of the PhD trajectory, which is important, because often with the PhD committee, it's often usually at the end that an external member gets invited, which is sometimes not very productive. It's much more productive if these external member of a PhD committee is already involved from the start, because you can get much more feedback for the student, for the PhD student. Of course, the obvious other element was the new insights we obtained from the research project for our work. But not unimportant, there's also a number of new projects that emerged. And so these new projects that emerged are listed here. One is a Horizon 2020, which was a collaboration with maybe 10 different universities, which looked also at growth and innovation in different European countries. And so the CELSA project was actually exploring initial work, which then fed in the application of the Horizon 2020. We were there a partner. But that also resulted in some very interesting new insights. And again, here we could leverage the data sets that we exploited and acquired through this collaboration. We also very recently even were involved in an EU tender that is looking at declining investment dynamics in Slovenia. Again, an example where the fact that we collaborated, we got to know each other, we got to know the data sets, we got access to these data sets, and these data sets are in such a unique nature, that it allowed us to kind of put the project together to tender on this call, and we got it, and so we have very interesting results emerging, and so that's an immediate impact on also economic policy that takes place at the European Commission. And then a final important one is that we obtained similar financing from the FWO, which is the Flemish Science Council, but also the equivalent in Slovenia, which is the Slovenian Research Agency. So we submitted the same project with a little bit different tweak to these science councils, and so they financed also that project. So we basically had a multiplier. So CELSA was the initial, you could say, seed funding, but by recycling the project and submitting it to the other science agencies, we actually had a multiplier effect, which allowed us to do even more interesting research, explore more interesting research questions as well. So that's a direct value added, I think, of this collaboration. The results were, I think, quite satisfactory. I'm just listing here a few direct outcomes of the project, of the CELSA project. Of course, there are more, but the question is to allocate it to exactly the CELSA. I think we restrict to the ones I list here. So we had some publications that came out of the project. I'm mentioning them here. A number of working papers we are still working on, and we will continue to work on. So CELSA is not only an opportunity to start collaborating with each other in different universities, it's also persistent. The collaboration is persistent, in our case at least, and that's important because you build something up and is lasting for a long time. So we have a number of working papers that we're still working on. And then, of course, the new projects that I already mentioned. That's a very nice side effect, I think, and it allows you also to continue building the relationship and building the collaboration. And then finally, there's a number of important other collaborations that emerged from here, and I'm listing them here. I must say, on the slides that I see, they look very tiny, and I'm already wearing my glasses, so I hope you can see that. But so, to mention a few, there's a collaboration with YESE that emerged from this. That's one of the top business schools globally. That was a collaboration with Professor Bruno Cassiman, who was based over there, but who is actually now also linked to Leuven. We had a collaboration with Bocconi University and a number of other places like Aarhus University. So the fact that we collaborated with the Ljubljana University also opened an entire new network with other universities. So it's kind of like an oil stain. It spreads out, and so I think that's a nice aspect of this. I believe. All right, that's what I wanted to say. I'm happy to answer questions if there's questions about this. But you know, I just wanted to briefly summarize the nature of collaboration that we were embarking upon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joep. Yeah, so the questions can go via the chat, as been mentioned in the beginning. We move on with session 2, which is on the regional and national funds that are available at KU Leuven and in Poland. So we have two presentations in this session, one by Ms. Stephanie Egermond from the